So today's video is gonna represent the closest that I do related to intentional vegetable gardening. I'm gonna be talking about my zone 1, trying to keep them annual, but other things get in there, garden beds. They're terraced, so that they're like technically raised on one end. I'm into dry farming, so if you are gonna do dry farming, you don't want to raise your beds because that soil is going to dry out. It's going to heat up faster. There's all kinds of benefits, drainage, blah, 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 and ways you can amend it, bring in soil versus having to wait many years for the soil to become vegetable growing friendly. So this is broken concrete. On the bottom one that has the broken concrete around it, this is above the earth substantially. So the one that I'm sitting in now, I had to fill this a whole lot with soil. A mixture of topsoil and mushroom compost, something like that. I believe the one above me was 50-50. I think it was this half that was native soil. Pretty much the native soil came to the top, but then the other half had to be filled. And I had done an experiment years ago where I threw seeds out and I saw the differences in how they grew. Obviously the imported soil was more fertile. The native soil here, since it's close to the house, it's not the forest loam that you see when you get out a bit more. And then the one above that mostly had to be imported. And then the one above that, the top one, is mostly native soil. What does composted wood chips look like that have just been sitting here for a long time? And what's the best way to use these beds now that I'm ready to start planting into them again? So this isn't like a very fancy or novel concept, but you take your wood chips, your composted wood chips, put them over a mesh. I'm doing this very roughly. Thick wood chips go there. Smaller wood chips are going in here. And it really looks like what you would find if you buy a crappy forced product kind of compost where you're like, oh, this I can't grow in this, it's very woody. It's kind of like that. The ideal time of the year to be doing a sifting like this would be in the summer when it's dry, so that more of the smaller particles are separated from the big chips and they would come out more. And I've done this sifting thing in the summer before and it's nice and smoother. There's a dude on YouTube that has that does this with a concrete mixer. So you can also make yourself a tool where you throw your composted wood chips in it, it spins and it shoots out the thicker particles in one area and the thinner particles in another area. So you can invent something like that. I also have this third bucket, which is pure chicken poo. So again, that's based on what you have around you. Take some poo. And so what's the problem with growing vegetables and wood chips is, or chunky wood chips is, it robs the plants of nitrogen. So what's the counter to that? Pure chicken poo. Like if you put pure chicken poo on vegetables, then you will burn them because that's too much nitrogen. So I just had this stupid idea of why don't I mix this low nitrogen with high nitrogen environment and see about, I don't know, just see how that works. What do I have? What does this look like underneath? You keep going, you keep going. I think it depends on what species of tree was here, because sometimes it's like different in different areas, but some of it's very woody and some of it, like up here, is very soily. So this looks almost like just pure soil with just chunks of wood chips in it. But again, it's not, you can't, there's still too much wood under the surface, so a vegetable is not going to be happy in there. But look at that. So here, this is why I have a bunch of worm castings in here. If this was dry and sifted, this is just amazing soil or compost, whatever you would call that. I guess it's more compost. But compost filled with its own natural worm castings without having to add your worm castings. But that is hard to sift right now. Worm castings are sticky. They're sticking to the wood chips just like that. You can see. And this is where you can see mushroom compost. And there's some green algae in there. It's like, that's just some of it. It's very sandy. So that's how it looks on underneath these wood chips here. I'm back at the bottom bed. This is this bed with lots of mushroom compost in it. I have sifted and done a wood chip poo mix right here with the stiff poo chunks I put on the border there. I'm going to do something with them later. And this is how it looks when I dig deep enough that I'm hitting some of that original soil layer. And as you can see, it is still not void of wood chips. There are still wood chips underneath the soil. So I have been trying to make a decision on how low you want to go to get wood chip chunks out. But one thing that I noticed happened when I got to this darker layer is I see more worms. And I would rather not be doing this tilling action, but I'm kind of exploring how far those wood chips go. So if I go lower, there's still buried organic matter in there, wood chips, something even as thick as this. And I made a decision to stop kind of right around here. And this is why I'm mixing chicken poo in with this. Because if these are really going to rob the soil of nitrogen, then the poo in theory would replace it. And this is what my remaining poo chunks look like. It's kind of in a shadow, so you can't see. But all you have to know is that some is soft and some are thicker. So I'm doing this thing here where I do wood chip, poo, wood chip, poo, wood chip, poo. And then I have my wild lettuce stalk dried. I did some mixing on the way up. And then I just do some final mixing. And then, but when I do that, there ends up, and I pour it here, there ends up being some poo chunks. All right, they're quite solid. And I'm going to show you one thing I'm going to do with that later. But the primary function of that could be, you know, like when it's hot outside and a gust of wind feels really good. So let's say there's a plant in here that ends up starting, and then it just doesn't have as much nitrogen as it wants, and it's suffering. Then there can be rain or Melissa coming with a watering can, and I can water these poo chunks. And if it's kind of uphill, you can just make that a little bit more elevated, and then you can water that in. In theory, the water would draw the nitrogen down and give it a whiff of like that cool wind. And I'll show you the second way that poo is going to be. I'm going to be experimenting with that poo. Oh, look at this. Wow. So some of that stuff is going to be underground. So in future videos, when you see anything that's suffering here or thriving, you'll see that these are the conditions underground. But you see there's lots of worms the lower you go, and so there's worm poop. So there's other kinds of fertilizer in here to compensate for these chunks. that bucket goes there, this bucket goes there. So I did some degrassing a little bit. So I'm just taking them over there. And then wormies go here. And I put some wood chips in there so that they would be happy going underground. So like slugs, worms like smooth surfaces. So they are just going as far down in there as possible. And if you didn't have this, you would be battling with worms trying to be escape artists. But it's kind of hot. They don't want to go up there right now, so they're going down. Give them enough of a home. This is chicken food. So when you do something like this, you're also, like when you're doing your zenning stuff, you're also deworming it and for some chicken feed. Because that is going, some of that goodness, that nutrient, whatever stuff that you created, that's going to show up in your eggs now. Yeah, you're robbing yourself of worms, but yeah, no shortage of worms. They'll just replace themselves. So one of the benefits of the terrace is that you can do some standing while you do work along the edges here. But then it also puts the bucket closer to your face when you're mixing poo. Isn't so good? But it's a nice break from squatting all the time. Although I have really great squatting capabilities. Poo's making it sticky. I just smooth it out. So still some solid poo chunks that go on the edge, depending on how much time you want to spend massaging the poo in your fingers. And so this is getting dumped. So this is how it looks dried out a bit, and this is it freshly applied. Poo chunks to the edges. So that will turn into that by the time I seed into it. By the time the sun comes over there. When it goes over there, it kind of sits there for a while now. Really long days. It's perfect weather. It's mid-50s. One of the good things about this long process is that it forces you to seed successionally. So it's forced successional seed sowing. So one week I'm up there, another week I'm here, another week there. So everything is gonna, if it worked, would sprout at different times. So that's a benefit. So now the sun is over there. I know you don't know where I'm pointing. It's later in the day, and I am done with this section. I have carrots. I'm actually using a bunch of parsnips because these don't last very long. And I found some old ones. And so it's like you can't really hold on to them very long, so you might as well just... another kind of carrot. There's some, it's a special mustard with violet stems, so something I thought would make good genetics if it went wild. There wasn't much of that left. Onions hate wood chips, so I'm saying this right now that these won't germinate. This is our lettuce. Whoa, whoops, too many. Turnip. Ooh, this is a pelleted parsnip. This is a free kohlrabi. There you go. And some beets. Yeah. So you can see I'm impatient. I'm a very impatient kind of personality. Okay, now for the poo. Okay, this is my idea. Method 2 for using your chicken poo when you have a critter issue. I thought it would be fun to see if a critter can sniff out a legume that is in a chicken poo ball. So making a poo ball, if the critter can sniff that out and still wants to eat that, I say good for it. Also, wherever they're embedded, they'll create a little boost of nitrogen for any seed that's nearby. It's weird how I have patience for these funny things, but I don't have patience for planting seeds the right way. Understandably, it's easier when the poo is softer. And now I'm getting impatient, so I'm kind of thinking this is enough. So you just wait until you get too impatient. And now I'm just pressing the poo over it. Also. Okay. And we want to leave some poo to be a river, a river of poo. And probably when I did that, some seeds got buried too much, but some of them won't. And when it rains, stuff will settle. We only want the lucky ones to germinate anyway. So now I give it a once over. I pretend I'm a bird. And I go, what can I see? Anything else I can see? I'm just gonna shove it in. Just remember which hand is your poo hand. When you start rubbing your face, Can a bird really distinguish between a little piece of wood chip and a seed? I think the birds more likely come after what I do because they see me disturbing the soil and they think when she disturbs the soil, she unearths a lot of worms. So I'm gonna go find the worms from the area she was disturbing. And then it could be that they just find the seeds when they're looking for worms. When you do this kind of stuff, you appreciate those rainy weeks. So this is how it looks now. I've been touching my camera with my poo hand. So I'm gonna take this glove off. There's still a poo layer there. One of the many ways to tell which of your chickens are dominant is to see which ones go after the worm bowl, which ones get to it first and devour them. So this is the fun part too. So I didn't get a whole lot of worms this time around. So it's not one of my most impressive worm bowls. I want to expose the worms somewhat, but I also know that they will find them. So like, I live for this shit, man. Watching these chickens go to town on these guys and having worm eggs. One day I'll film this and I'll have like a huge worm bowl. Here you go. Those white ones are so cute. So yeah, they finished them all. The white ones are dominant. They let the rooster grab them. So his daddy was white, like these guys. His dad would jump on any man's back. He was a crazy rooster. This is his boy, and he is like a dog. He is the sweetest rooster. Come over here, Nectarine. Come over here, Nectarine. Oh, the hens will. But that wasn't an attack one. That was just trying to be friendly. Roosters don't jump on you like this. Hey, 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 hey. These guys like jumping on people. Hey, you. Hey, I don't want to kneel in chicken poo. Won't you? There you go. She is low picking order. Do you guys get them all? Yeah, I think you guys got them all. Once again, Nectarine. Show them that you're a nice rooster. Yeah. Okay. It's funner when the bucket has more worms in it, but you got the gist.